r/AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit, what clicked about a pupil after meeting their parents? One of my students is safe playing. He won't try any new ideas while doing maths and would frequently look out to applying some formulas. I used to think that he genuinely is less creative than others, but at times, particularly when playing games, he would show bursts of real brilliance. When I met his mother, it clicked why. The mother burst into tears saying she was afraid what would happen if the child would fail. She really desperately wanted him to succeed, and because of this desire, has all but closed his chances of success. He is so afraid of failure that he doesn't even try. There was another one. He was really afraid of both succeeding and failing. His line of thinking went like, if I succeed, the parents would expect more. So, let's fail. Then, he will flip. If I fail, they will scold me. He led a torturous life. I have a belief that the two biggest blocks in the development of a child are his school and his parents. Most of the flaws in a kid's personality can be attributed to one of the two or both. Had a kid that you looked at and it was very much a lights are on but nobody is home sort of feeling. I teach high school so sometimes that's just the phase they are in, but this one was basically living perpetually in that mode. Kid has an IEP, Individualized Educational Plan, which is a legal special education doc. I can't reveal what was in there but it was, suffice to say, generic. So it feels like there are pieces missing. Days go on. This kid is the gold standard of something is up. Completely illegible handwriting to the point it doesn't resemble writing. You ask about what we are doing in class and the answer is so random and off task that if the kid didn't look and act fairly childlike for their age you would assume hardcore drug use. But this kid, if anything, had Ralph Wiggum genes and didn't know what drugs were. Mom comes back to school night which is supposed to be 5 minutes with a class of parents. A nice how do you do and everyone moves on. She corners me. Immediately starts telling me about her concerns, that I don't fully appreciate her miracle baby who was mutant till 8, didn't walk until 4, walked backwards first, and had an IQ of about 60. They told her this kid would never make it in school, and didn't I think you just couldn't till anything was ever delayed, because this is a miracle. That's why she blocked all mention of those conditions from the documents, because people would never guess otherwise. Miracle. When the word miracle comes up from a parent it always explains a lot. We had a crazy kid in 6th grade a few years back. I mean, he was the type of kid you assume will probably go on a shooting spree at some point. He was diagnosed with all sorts of acronyms/acrostics, so he was on a ton of meds. On his medicine he was defiant, but manageable. Typical class clown type stuff. Off his medicine, oh man. We could all tell when he came in the building whether or not he had taken it. It was in his eyes or something. He routinely refused to do anything and had to be physically carried, limp-bodied, to the principal's office a few times. He hit a teacher once and called another one a bitch to her face. In the same day, we had parent/teacher night and his mom came in. She was 26. He was 12. It became clear to us that the reason he was off meds so much was because she was taking them. She had also just had another baby, so he was acting out more because of that. His mother had a very low IQ, clearly, and so did he. He ended up getting sent to alternative school eventually. Never saw him again. Didn't actually meet the parents, but was recently told about the parents of a 9th grader I have. Apparently, the dad is super verbally abusive, constantly belittling the son. Like, bordering on reportable abuse, but just not quite over that line, his former teacher said. This kid acts out, is constantly seeking positive attention, has no self-esteem, despite being pretty smart and capable. It all just makes a lot of sense now. Edit. For all the people who are saying that I should report it, I have not personally witnessed the abuse, nor have I even met the parents in question. so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to report it anyway. In fact, in my state, there are penalties if I were to do so. But moreover, I trust my colleagues who have taught him and have witnessed the negative interactions with the dad, and I believe that they have the requisite experience and judgment to have been able to make the determination not to report the father. Edit 2. Thank you all for your concern though, and I'm very sorry for those who have gone through something like this. I'm the kid. When I was growing up, I'd get pulled aside and asked if I smoked. I'm talking elementary school. My parents, much like someone else had mentioned, smoked in the house with the windows closed. I was heavy, really heavy, with a lot of confidence issues that still stick around today. I had problems with anger growing up, not so much now, but I was an excellent student when you could inspire me to focus or found something I was passionate about. They'd meet my parents and nod to me. My dad, who would work swing and overtime every day, almost to support my mum's 2 to 3 pack a day habit at the time. Now it's only 1 pack, supposedly. My mom, who basically looked strung out on drugs, but was really just taking so many antipsychotics and pain meds that she might as well have been. My parents tried to be supportive of me, but I'm not sure they really knew how. I'd keep a bottle of Febreze on me starting in middle school because the questioning from teachers got worse. I'm graduating college in June, even though it's taken me twice as long as it should, mostly because of money, a lack of guidance, and my own mental BS. I got a job working in student government for the first time ever and was sent to a conference in Washington, D.C. by my college last year. I worked my first non-minimum wage job this summer and got invited to come back with another raise. To my 4th and 5th grade teacher, if you're reading this, I'm okay. I did it, and I hope your ladybug collection has grown. Edit. Holy moly, RIP my inbox, and thank you to the lovely stranger with gifting my first gold. Thank you so much for all of the lovely comments. I'm trying not to cry on the train to my vacation. It means the world to me. Not yet a teacher, but studying to be one. In one of my major field experiences, there was a kid who was insanely competitive. He would take everything as a challenge and would accuse others of cheating if he lost. He even challenged me, a 19-year-old student at the time, to a race. I told him it really wouldn't be fair, since I was fully grown, and he started berating me that I was scared to race him. Mind you, he was 9 at the time. So the end of the year is coming around, and we had a field day where parents volunteered to do games for the kids, and it was supposed to be a fun day full of popsicles and school games. His parents had a relay race, spin around the bat, jump rope a certain distance, etc. And when it was his turn, they encouraged him to cheat by not following their rules, and got upset because some poor girl dropped the bat, obviously meaning she would be disqualified. They also brought a tug-of-war rope, and it was the girls of the class vs the boys. The girls being outnumbered, my field experience teacher put me on their team. I decided I wouldn't tug, so that it was a bit more fair, but once again the students' parents started getting red-faced telling him to win. I looked at my field experience teacher and she just nodded and I pulled. Kid got knocked down a peg. I was a teacher's aide in an after-school care program in an elementary school. It's where the kids come after the school day ends, so they can be cared for until their parents get off work. There was one boy who was a total bully / attention hound. He was stocky and tall and strong for his age, 9 at the time, and a lot of the other kids were scared of him because he demanded that they play with him and then threatened to break things if they didn't do what he wanted. He was totally disrespectful of any adult authority, just a general terror. I disliked him. He was dropped off in the morning by one babysitter and picked up by another at the latest possible time. I never saw a parent. His mother was a news reporter for the Denver Post, like a lady about town who covered the society pages and did reviews of things. Friday afternoon, this kid was being super good. He spent all afternoon drawing things for his mom and saying, "My mom is coming to get me tonight. Not my babysitters. She has the whole weekend off and we are going to do things together, just her and me. Here's the list of all the things. Things like watch a movie, go for a walk, eat dinner together, etc. Pickup time arrived, and here comes the mom, yapping away on her cell phone. Back when having a cell phone was very unusual, signing her kid out without speaking to anyone. Her son is standing there holding his pictures to show her, so excited. She shushed him and brushed off his hand, and her conversation was, "Oh yeah, I can go review that new spa in Aspen. I'm not doing anything this weekend. Let me just drop kid's name at the babysitter for the weekend. Blah blah." The kid visibly crumpled in on himself. He was silently crying as his mom yanked him out the door while she yapped on her phone, not even as much as a "hi honey" to her son. I did my best to be very understanding, caring, and attentive to the kid after that, asking him how his day went, praising him when he behaved well. I wish I knew what became of him. I left to go to college, but I know whenever I saw his mom's byline in the paper I wanted to kick her in the head. She died recently, and I was like, good. I may be a horrible person, but that kid was simply a chihuahua in a handbag to her. Her obituary said she was especially devoted to her son, and I wanted to puke. All I could see was that little boy, with his drawings in his hands, brushed aside by his mother, collapsing in on himself. I hope he's okay now. I was an elementary teacher's aide for several years in college. We were having a parent-teacher conference with a struggling 5th grader and his parents. The poor kid was bright, but somewhat lazy, and reading at barely a 1st grade level. The teacher laid out what we've been working on with the student individually for the last few months to try to improve his reading and get him engaged in learning. The teacher then gently suggested that the kid should be practicing his reading at home with an adult. I suggested that, since the kid loved Pokemon, there were some juvenile novelizations of Pokemon stories at the local bookstore that he may enjoy, and that it would help interest and engage him in improving his reading comprehension. I'll never forget the withering look the father gave me. We don't have extra money lying around to buy something that he can do at school. I was 19 at the time and shaky around confrontation, so I lowered my gaze and shut my mouth. The teacher reassured the parents that we were doing everything in our power to help their child, and that we would continue helping their son improve his reading. That was that. A few days after this, the students were taking turns at the end of the day telling us something good that happened to them that week, a ritual that I really admire, that the teacher started. The kids loved it. When it was the struggling student's turn, he stood up and got an empty video game case and controller out of his bag and said, "This week, my dad bought the new PlayStation and lots of new games, and we've been staying up late every night playing." I almost cried in frustration and pity. Please understand, I have absolutely nothing against kids playing video games, but it has to be in moderation. His fucking parents sat there and told us that they had no extra money to help their kid not only get better at learning, but actually enjoy doing it with something he loved, like a goddamn $4.99 book about Pokemon. But then they turn around and spend hundreds of dollars on a new PlayStation and games. Maybe buy your kid a book about video games, asshole. So frustrating. Student teaching for high school seniors and juniors. I had this guy that was a shady 80, no specific problems, just very low intelligence. But this guy worked his ass off. Never a late assignment, did all extra credit that was offered. Usually extra credit is done by those who don't need it and ignored by those who do need it. Made flashcards for like every test and quiz, even though I never said to. Model student, just had low test scores. If it was an assignment that could be done with time and effort, he did it. Unfortunately tests aren't like that, and that's where he had the most problems. Back to school night comes along, and I meet his dad, an NCO in the Marines. Courteous, well-spoken, and completely knowledgeable about all of his son's upcoming assignments and grades. Totally made sense. Kid is getting through with hard work and dedication, and pulling off a B average. Amazing what support from parents can do. In most cases, a kid like this would probably be failing most of his classes. These children, there were 3 of them, were known for being difficult at the after-school care I worked in. I had always heard bad things about dad, but not until I actually experienced it firsthand did I make the connection between his parenting and his kids' behavior. The eldest, 5th grade, would refuse to listen to us. He would often kick other children, provoke them by grabbing them and pulling them in close, or just act out in a way that was verbally abusive. When we asked him to stop, he would respond with "screw you." The middle, 3rd grade, struggled to pay attention for more than 5 minutes and often picked on other kids by intentionally stirring them up and spreading rumors. The youngest, kindergarten, was 6 but still not entirely toilet trained and had to repeat kindergarten because she wasn't at normal developmental or social levels. One afternoon, the eldest is in a pretty good mood. Because I'm curious, I ask, and he announces proudly, "Dad is picking me up early at 4 p.m. because we are going to see a movie this afternoon." This is awesome, because the 3 kids are always last to be picked up. But 4 p.m. comes and goes, and there's no sign of dad. 4:30 p.m, 5 p.m, 6 p.m, 6:30 p.m. It's closing time. We get a call from dad. "I'm sorry, I got caught up." It's almost 7 p.m. before dad arrives. As the kids grab their bags, he tries to explain to me, but he's sort of all over the place. Some actual quotes from our conversation. "Don't tell the kids, but I'm so gone right now. I stayed back with some mates and had some drinks. Investment banking is stressful, so you look forward to Friday. So, you be, what, 20 now? What's a young pretty thing like you doing working so late on a Friday night?" He offers to slip some cash to me and my co-worker for the extra time. My mate is driving us home. I only trust some of my mates with the new Porsche. The nail in the coffin was when eldest asked dad, "I thought you said we were going to see that movie tonight." To which he replies simply, "Oh, yes sorry mate, I forgot." And in that moment, I realized that these kids were being told over and over and over, "You don't really matter that much to me." Edit. About 2 months after this happened, the kids packed up and left the school with about a week's notice. Although they told us how much they hated us regularly, I hadn't ever seen them all as quiet as in that last week. We haven't seen them since. When I was student teaching, 2nd grade, there was a little boy in the class who was just a genuinely friendly and sweet kid. He struggled a little academically when it came to learning to read and his handwriting had some problems, but he was the hardest worker and never got frustrated or thought that we were stupid like many other students with those difficulties do. He was well liked by everyone and didn't have a mean bone in his body, and he was extremely well adjusted despite the fact that his parents were divorced. I ended up meeting both parents separately during field trips. Both parents are extremely involved in his life and put him ahead of any of their problems they have with each other. They genuinely want what's best for him and it shows. The dad takes him out to the sports bar for boys night, where they share root beer, which I thought was really cool. Both parents genuinely are awesome people with great attitudes, and it definitely shows in their kid. I don't know if this counts, but I used to help tutor ESL to Spanish speaking immigrants. There was one woman who was super focused and dedicated and was making real improvements lesson to lesson. But she would miss massive amounts of time because she said she had to work, take care of her kid, and it really hurt her studies. She was stressed and frustrated all of the time, even though she said she loved her job and was doing alright for herself. Then one day she brought her mother in because she hadn't been to tutoring in a month and needed to come, I guess. That woman was a terror. She wasn't even that old, probably in her late 50s. She yelled at her granddaughter, who also came along, and would smack her randomly, complaining that she was so well behaved. It clicked that the woman was missing so much time because she had to babysit her mother just as much as her daughter. I felt so bad for her that she had such a burden and yet so much respect that she'd go through so much to care for her mother. I was that kid. Father worked shifts, and when he was home he was doing backyard car repairs to help make ends meet. Not because he didn't earn a good living, he actually did, but because my mother was a gambling addict. Instead of addressing the problem, he focused on solving the symptoms. I went to school from an unheated house with a mother still in bed, and no breakfast in freezing weather with no coat, because she spent the money on gambling. Went 4 years without medical treatments for the same reason. No toothpaste, no hair conditioner, no haircuts, old shoes, socks, and underwear with holes, all because anything she could make us do without went to gambling. Hair was done in the frigid school gym in bare feet and a shirt, because gym shoes and sweatshirts cost money that could be used to make bets instead. One day the vice principal called me to her office. Not to reprimand me, but to give me the optional pieces of uniform I didn't have, like a coat and a school blazer. They were the options without which you froze half to death as you walked or biked several miles to school. She didn't make a big deal out of it, she simply met a need. Her act of kindness lit a spark in me. To this day, almost 40 years later, I still put money, time and hard work into caring for others and charity work. I'm the mum who will volunteer at school, quietly contribute anything the teachers are short of, that person. Not for recognition or thanks. In fact, I'm embarrassed if you do that. It's because nearly 40 years ago someone cared. This one broke my heart, and it's something I still think about from time to time. Just a few months into my first year, several 5th grade students were sent home for lice. One was a small blonde girl named Jean who was fairly quiet and shy. Her clothes were always somewhat unkempt and had a strong cigarette smoke odor. She very rarely completed her homework and hated answering questions in class. However, she was kind, attentive, and performed well on her in-class assignments. We had another round of head checking about a week after the first one and found that Jane still had lice/caught lice again. She was sent home with a call to the parents letting them know. The next day she walked into the classroom with a shaved head. Her parents shaved her hair off so that they did not have to deal with the lice again. She cried when I asked her about it. I felt horrible for her. 5th grade is a tough place to be when you have something that is obviously different about you that other kids can pick on. I could not grow her hair back for her, but I did buy her a cute hat that I allowed her wear in my class if she wanted. It seemed to help. When I met her parents shortly after, they showed up with 3 younger kids that looked about a year apart with the same shaved haircut as Jane. The parents smelled like cigarette smoke and pet urine odor, and I could hear them cursing at their kids in the hallway before I even saw them. A girl in my 7th grade class was really bright, but almost never turned in her homework, so she just skated by on test scores. One time, I commended her for helping another student who didn't understand the assignment, only to realize that night that she didn't do her own. I called her parents in and quickly realized they're the type that have an answer for everything and were all too quick to put the responsibility on me, as if I should stand over their daughter to make sure she works. I turned to ask the girl what she thought, since she had been completely quiet, and her parents began to answer for her again. I put my finger, index, up and said, "No, you've had your turn. I want to hear what she thinks about all this." Well, she apparently really appreciated that, because she went on for about 30 minutes about all her views on education. At the end, I kept her parents quiet and told her that if she's willing to talk such a big game, she needs to back it up and do the work without her parents or me interfering. She didn't miss another assignment all year. Proud teacher moment. This is from back when I was doing my student teaching. There was a girl in one of my classes that never did any work in class, turned in her homework late, and would ignore huge projects until literally the last minute, and then ask to come in for help every day at lunch/after school to make up for the missing work. Eventually I caught her cheating on a quiz. She had written down the answers, put them in the plastic cover of her binder, and put her binder down by her feet. I took her quiz, gave her a 0, and told her that cheating wasn't allowed. About a week later, we had parent-teacher conferences. The girl came with her mother, who took out every assignment that had been graded and handed back, and proceeded to argue with me over individual points. Things along the lines of, well, she spelled it all right, so that deserves some credit, right? Or she circled the right answer, so she should still get some credit, when that right answer had been crossed off, and then another answer had been selected. This took nearly an hour to go through. Finally, the mother brought up the quiz, and I told her about the cheating. The mom said, well, you should give her some credit on it. She was pretty clever to think of that trick. From then on, I made sure to schedule meetings with myself, my mentor teacher, and the principal present. Not a teacher but a student. In kindergarten we had this kid who was really odd and smelled funny, but he seemed cool, so we would hang out at recess. I had a birthday party, and it was only supposed to last maybe a few hours. All of the kids but him went home fairly early, but it was really late and his parents still hadn't showed up. I was getting tired and wanted to go to bed, so my parents set up some blankets for us in the living room, and we had a sleepover. At 2 AM his parents finally show up, after multiple calls with no answer. Instantly I realized what was up. Even as a small child I knew these parents were the definition of white trash. They reeked of alcohol. My mom's side of the family is full of alcoholics, so I knew what it smelled like. They also told some bullshit story about how they had new tires of their car and the speedometer showed the wrong speed, and they got pulled over, and some other bullshit. It all clicked, why he acted so odd, and why he smelled. It was cigarette smoke. At the start of first grade he never showed up, and like a month into the year he was there for a few days. Then randomly in third grade he showed back up again for a few weeks. I never saw him again after that. I looked him up on Facebook a while back, and it looks like he is following in his parents' footsteps up falling into every white trash stereotype. I asked my parents about this kid a while ago, and they said that the reason he wasn't with us in school for a few years is that he got taken away by Child Protective Services, which my mom called. Then he came back the W times, because that's when his parents got him back, but he was taken away again and that's why he left us. I feel bad for the kid, because at first he was really nice, but over time as I saw him again he became more mean and rude. Such shitty parents. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.